My name is Michael Frank, and great to see everyone here at the Sports and Tech Meetup. Major apologies for scheduling this during Game 1 of the World Series, but it's okay, the Red Sox are up 5-0. No applause, okay. I'm really excited to dive into the discussion, but first I want to give a big thanks to everyone who put this together. First of all, a big thank you to the awesome folks from StubHub, Kiip, and 46 Sports and Talk.tv for hosting and sponsoring. This is the second event that Kiip's hosted, and it's great because, as you can see, they have a beautiful office. And anyway, Kiip's a mobile rewards network that is redefining mobile advertising through an innovative platform that leverages moments of achievement in games and apps. For instance, in sports apps, developers use Kiip to reward users with rewards from brands like EA Sports or Old Spice. If you have more questions about Kiip, Tristan's in the back. Put your hand up, Tristan. Go talk to Tristan, and he can educate you guys as much as you want about that. In terms of the other sponsors, 46 Sports is the first digital almanac dedicated to amateur athletics. And their founder, Pierre Luca, was a real catalyst for getting this event going. So thank him. And Talk TV, whose app you can see directly behind me, is the first voice-enabled second screen iPad and iPhone app. If you're a Juventus soccer fan, one, sorry about the game today, and two, the app's awesome because they have a great community for them, so definitely check it out. And finally, it's awesome to have StubHub sponsoring for the first time. You guys all know what StubHub does. They're the biggest secondary ticket marketplace in the world. But I'm even more excited because basically when this started, one of the motivations was how can we get more of these sports companies to really have like a global impact and have huge exits. And StubHub's one of the few companies that's done that really effectively, so it's great to have them involved. StubHub's actually sponsoring a contest. So we'll probably have info on the contest in the back at some point. But anyway, the contest they're sponsoring is sort of a tweet up. If you guys tweet and you use the hashtag Sports and Tech and you use @StubHub, the person who does the best tweets about this event will win a set of tickets to the Golden State Warriors opening game next week versus the LA Lakers. So tweet a lot. Let's see. Okay, final thank yous. Big thanks to Jay Cooper over there who's filming this for all the people who can't be here. He runs a sports and marketing agency. It's pretty awesome as well, so definitely talk to him. And finally, as I said, tweet out a lot about hashtag Sports and Tech so we can track everything. And if you ask questions, I might even ask one on the panel. All right, so without further ado, I want to introduce you to our panelists. We'll run with this panel for about 45 minutes or so, maybe half of it, it'll be my questions and half to be yours. Anyway, from left to right, we have on my left Michael Roberts, and Michael Roberts is the senior executive editor of Outside Magazine, and he also happens to be a lifelong Giants fan, though apparently he doesn't get to watch much with the kids and stuff. To the left, we have Godfrey Powell. Godfrey is the senior manager of business development at Samsung. He was formerly at Krug Sports and Entertainment Ventures, and he's a fan of pretty much all the Atlanta teams, so the Braves, Falcons, and Hawks. So I think he's having a tough time right now. To his left is Travis Giggy. He's the founder and CTO of Swing Bicycling and Golf, and he's a fan of the Denver Broncos, so his life's probably a little better. And Chris Redlitz is at the end. He's a partner at Transmedia Capital. He's a serial entrepreneur, formerly at Reebok, and he's a fan of the classic LA teams, so the Koufax Drysdale Dodgers, the Showtime Lakers, and the Fearsome Foursome Rams. So those are some pretty nice teams. Anyway, I can shut up now and can let the experts do some talking. So to start off, what I'd first love to know is kind of the high-level question. There's so much new technology innovation going on that's going to affect recreational athletes. What gets you guys most excited about having the biggest impact? And we have a bunch of different perspectives, so I'd say we can go down the line with this one. Whoever wants to start can do it.
One of the things that I imagine we're all going to talk about a little bit tonight is heads-up display technology. And just to get real specific, to give you an idea of something that's coming that I find exciting, and I know Outside is looking into, I know other magazines are looking into, other media outlets, is a product called the Recon Jet, which is a heads-up display glasses. It's Google Glass for endurance athletes, and their target audience is specifically cyclists. And it has all that functionality of Google Glass. So you've got, you've got the GPS functionality. It's SMS text enabled, so you can monitor texts as they come in. It's Bluetooth enabled, so all your monitoring devices on your bike can be tracked. I'm not sure if they've had this quite sorted out, but the idea is you sync with Strava too. So just try to imagine what that means as a cyclist, right? You're climbing a hill on Mount 10. Right in front of you, in your glasses, you're seeing your metrics. You know what your power rating is, you know what your speed is, you know what your rate of ascent is. You can monitor a text if it comes in, but more importantly, you might know, and I'm assuming some knowledge of Strava out there because it's so popular these days, but you know if you're going to potentially make up a spot on the Strava leaderboard at the top of that hill, and all that is right there in your glasses, which also have an HD camera and video in them. So if you talk about the kinds of products that are really going to impact recreational sports, to me, that is a very impactful product. And it's also part of the reason I think they do so well, of course, is it's reaching an audience that has shown really strong demand for this kind of technology.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really interesting point. So Godfrey, you obviously are coming from both your own personal perspective, but also from the perspective of Samsung, maybe probably one of the 5 most powerful tech companies in the world. And you guys recently at least released a smartwatch and have been fairly active in the space. What gets you guys most excited going forward?
Yeah, so I'll take a step back because a lot of people are like, what does Samsung do with sports? So Samsung does the Chelsea sponsorship, as you're aware. We've been the Olympic sponsor for the last 20, 25 years, Winter Olympics. We're big on ESPN in terms of sponsoring activities there. And so about a year and a half ago, we have a division here that focuses on solely creating services and content around our devices. And one of the big verticals that we're focusing on is sports. So I'm leading that initiative in terms of what startups, what can we do to really create and build a better experience. So we're looking at a lot of things. We have a couple of things coming out in the next couple of months that are going to be really exciting. But to your point, we found the data is very, very valuable. But what we found is that it is not necessarily, it can be overwhelming for the average consumer. So we know that for the hardcore recreational athletes who are constantly checking their heart monitor, their glucose levels, their whatever they're doing, that's fine. But it's a little gimmicky for the mass consumer, the mass fan. They'll buy a Fitbit, they'll buy a Jawbone Up, but after a while, they'll kind of let it go. So what we're looking for is trying to figure out solutions that will tell a story with your data. So it will say, you worked out this morning for half an hour, and you ate a donut at 2 p.m. That was actually a great time because the way your body works, that's your highest level, your most active level at 2 p.m. It has very little effect on your diet plan or your health plan or your overall weight. But the challenge is how do you convert all that data, how do you tell a story, and how do you tell it very seamlessly and in layman's terms. The other thing is because, as he mentioned, we have the smartphone, and tons of people have our smartphones. We know, and we are trying to figure out how to capture more and more data and really extricate that value back to the end user, right? People, not necessarily, they do it because they have to with the different devices that I mentioned and because of different apps, but ideally someone would love it if they don't have to do anything. They just pick up their smartphone out of the box, and there's very little kind of pre-assembly, pre-programming that will help align with what their needs are. So we're really looking at those kind of areas to drive home.
That's really interesting. So Travis is a builder, having just created an app that's very popular. I'm interested in both sort of what you're most excited about, and also if you found sort of what Godfrey sees at a high level, sort of true with your own personal experience about kind of people wanting a more, I'd say almost ambient experience, sounds like what you were saying.
Yeah. I stay so heads down in my company from a day-to-day basis that I don't have the top level that these guys get. And so I can only talk about my particular industry when it comes to the technology. For me, the devices could be a game changer. I see them coming everywhere. I mean, we just did an integration with Pebble Watch, I think this could be a game changer. It's bad for my fledgling sponsorship and advertising efforts because I take my watch out of my phone out of my pocket like 2 times around now because everything's done right here on the watch. But it's fantastic for a user experience perspective because it makes everything so easy. Looking forward to doing a Samsung integration next because I can see the value of this. I see chips being embedded in golf balls. I see them being embedded in golf clubs. But from my perspective as a builder, that stuff isn't here yet. Maybe that's what's next. But what's here right now are APIs, data sharing, platforms that we can easily roll out onto. The speed of development is increasing at a pace that I've never seen before. I mean, we have an HTML5 app that we roll something out and it goes onto both platforms simultaneously, iOS and Android. And we can compete against much larger companies with a smaller workforce. And so, from my perspective, that's what's exciting for me is the speed. I guess the other thing that's exciting for me is not really technology related, but it's that advertising is ways to monetize your mobile apps are getting better and better all the time. CPMs are coming up on ad networks. People like Kiip are getting really creative about helping the small guys like us, the up-and-coming guys, to monetize their apps. And once you can get money, you can get more talent. Once you get money, you can get more people in the front door, and then things really start getting exciting. So that's mine.
And what about you, Chris? I mean, you obviously have an investor's perspective and a company perspective.
Just for clarity, we are investors in Kiip. I think the couple of things that are interesting and exciting for me are all the data that we get through all the components you mentioned. This whole wearable Google Glass type of technology, obviously Strava, letting you get data about what you're doing in real time, but also the fact that it becomes very social. So you can share that, and you can have these sort of virtual competitions. Strava had this thing that's called King of the Hill. You were mentioning that about who's going to do the most elevation over a year's period. So you can really compete at that level, sort of real time, and see where you are. The other thing is that we can use that for our own benefit. There's a product that's actually it's a more professional product, but it was recently introduced by a company called Apti, I think it's called, and it's basically using the NFL now in some of the teams where they're wearing the vests, and all the data that's being extracted from the vest is being downloaded to the coaches, and they're seeing player load and avoiding injuries based on not overexerting the athlete, which is really interesting. It's done on a professional side, but it could actually be done on the recreational side. So there's those things that are injury prevention and also the social parts that are, to me, very interesting.
Yeah, just to go back to Chris for a second, I think a lot of that stuff's really cool, and it seems like stuff that's really cool is oftentimes investable and sometimes not investable, maybe just because it's too far in the future. I've heard a lot of people say Google Glass apps, quite honestly, are a little too far in the future to invest in. Which of that stuff, from like an investment thesis standpoint, feels like you're ready to say, okay, here's $3 million today. I think we can get to a milestone in the next 24 months or whatever your thesis is.
Yeah, well, it's sort of whatever the platform is. Like before we had smartphones, there's a lot of things that weren't possible to invest in. I mean, things like GPS have changed a lot of things. Obviously, with GPS, Strava was able to create an application in a community. So, we have to see that technology start becoming ubiquitous before they're investable. Again, with Kiip, we invested in Kiip at the concept stage, and the whole premise around Kiip is to reward people based on achievements. And it started in games, and now it's moving into achievements in life. So I believe, if someone's in Strava, they can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there's a relationship now with Strava. Now when I achieve an achievement moment in my life, my general life or my activity, that I can do that too. So without apps, we wouldn't have those platforms, and without apps, Kiip wouldn't be able to have their product. So it's all sort of generated in what ubiquitous technologies develop.
Okay. Yeah, so in terms of thinking about kind of technology being ubiquitous and kind of crossing over to, this scene and then the scene of even later adopters and then my mom and then my grandma, I think sort of communications and messaging is one of the key things. It's like first it gets adopted, it gets written about in TechCrunch, then maybe it gets written about an outside magazine, or maybe sometimes it's the opposite order. So thinking about kind of how to communicate about your startup, I'm really interested in both from Michael's standpoint as an editor and outside. When's the right time if I'm a startup to be contacting you? What are the signals you guys get in terms of when it comes to technology? And likewise, from Travis and possibly Chris, from your perspective, how have you guys tried to leverage public relations and communications to your benefit?
That's a tough one. When we're doing our job, we're finding them before they're finding us. And I have journalist friends who troll Kickstarter for that exact reason. Because you're going to find some really good products out there long before they send you a press release. You're trying to. I feel like you're asking, is it a really business question? Like, when should they approach me so that I'll cover them? I don't really know if it's too early in terms of opening the conversation with journalists, because you want us to know early on whether or not if you're not ready for the coverage, that's going to be depending. But we love to cover stuff that's not out yet too. So there's a million ways to answer that. I don't know if that's a great answer. Sorry.
Got it. No, that's helpful. So everyone who's an early stage startup, email Michael tomorrow. It's not too early.
It's not. We're trying to look at the questions you're asking. We have run stories of the future athlete that's coming our way, and these are things being developed. And Recon Jetted and Bug Me, I sort of found out people working with them and have been pestering them with questions. So that's we're on the hunt, but we're always open. Press releases are not always that effective way to reach journalists for most of them.
I can say from Samsung's perspective, we very much like a product with some traction. We especially in my role, as much as disappointing as it might sound, we don't want the press release, just because it's such a massive organization and we will destroy a startup in terms of consuming their own resources. So as clear as you can have it defined, a working product that's already out in the market to prove the viability, that's best.
I'm sure Travis, that you have plenty of, whether they're Callaway's or Golf Magazine or whoever you're competing with at the moment. How do you think about kind of dealing with those companies? Because, and Godfrey, I'm really interested in your take as well, because you sort of have this competition, but these are also insanely big platforms that you can really benefit. So Travis, to start off with you, how have kind of your relations been with big companies and kind of thinking about competing with them versus using them?
From where I sit, Strava is an anomaly. They're an incredible story, but they're really well funded. And they got money from people that they knew. It's not their first time to the rodeo. They already sold a great company. They had great connections, and they got money, and they've been able to do a really great job with it. Most people in the sports world aren't going to have that benefit. Sports are hard to raise money for. I'm sure that this can be verified by other people up here, but for me, the only thing that has ever worked is to run under the radar and get proof. Get a really engaged community. Get a huge user base. We have 2 million registered users on our app right now, and the golf world is just starting to wake up to us. Nobody knew that we existed before this year until we started going out and talking to them. When it comes to competing with the established players that are out there, we just run where they're not, and we try to run faster than them. We try to run leaner than them, and we very much try to follow lean startup principles, and we very much try to run fast and hard, and if something works, we follow it on, we fix it. If something doesn't work, we drop it and we move on, and try to not cry over it. So all you can do is run hard.
Yeah, I'd agree with Travis on that, 100%. I think from our perspective, one of the things that you have a big advantage, right, which is obvious to everyone in the room, is the startup can stay very focused. And so when you're in a big company, as we're looking at all the sports initiatives that we want to accomplish and achieve, it's very, very horizontal, right? Horizontal within a vertical, which sounds crazy. And there's very little expertise. So anytime a startup comes to us or a company that's maturing, it's very deep and very clearly defined in terms of who they're targeting or the value that they're creating, and they're not trying to be like 4 or 5 different things. They're not trying to be an ESPN. They're not trying to do across the line. It makes it very easy to understand how to work with them, how to partner with them, potential acquisition opportunities, to plug them in into the roadmap that we have planned going forward. So I'd always say that the deeper and the more clear the story and the messaging is, the better it is.
So one of the verticals that we haven't talked a ton about so far, I think Chris might have mentioned it briefly, but it seems really interesting is health, particularly like how the cross between recreational athletics and how that interplays with health. Probably anyone on the panel, but especially Godfrey, Chris, and Michael. How are you seeing this? I guess Michael will start. What are the health kind of applications with this new wave of technology that's most exciting you?
Give me a little more specific exactly what you mean by health app. I mean, because that's a wide.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think sort of if you think about the quantified self from the top up, I can, at this point, we're starting to see biometric stuff that can measure my heart rate. We're starting to see stuff that can measure my steps. And that's the only stuff we have right now. And that's stuff that's not mature, but at least on the pedometer side is getting rapidly commoditized. What is the stuff that, you say, okay, I want to explain this to the world because I know this is going to be huge.
Well, we read a story a little while ago. The one you made me think of is and there's I guess there is an app for that, but it's this blood testing because the read you can get on your nutrition from actual blood tests versus telling an app what you're eating is a whole. And there's a growing industry there where people are buying you mail order a kit, you test your blood, you send it in, you've got nutritional advice, and then after that you can do home testing and plug it right into your app. So. That sounds a little freaky, right? I mean, it's one thing to have a pedometer, it's another thing to involve blood, but I mean, there's no real limit.
Sign me up.
Well, they're out there, there's a lot of them. Great. Well, Chris, you have a pretty big background and interest in the health space. What's most exciting to you in that space?
Well, there's some interesting things about prevention, but also rehabilitation. There's a company called Orca Health that has a really visual iPad application where you can actually take an MRI and overlay an MRI onto the hand, their image of a hand, and see where your injury is, and then you can go back to that on a regular basis and it'll show you how it's supposed to heal, which is really interesting. So it's all the extremities. So it integrates basically what traditional medicine has and also visual technology that allows you to really understand if you're doing the right things and you're healing properly. If you have problems, you don't have to go back to the doctor all the time to say, am I healing properly? I can visually see it. So that to me is really interesting.
What have your experiences that you can talk about been in terms of fundraising for apps, and kind of what are the red flags and things that you've learned are just harder to deal with?
I want to hear him talk.
Well, I mean, we focus on platforms, so we specifically have not invested in a specific app. We did no gaming apps at all. So we really, Kiip's a good example. It's a platform, so you can translate across a lot of different disciplines. It can be mobile, it can be web. So those are the things that are important to us. If you have hit-based businesses, you can be great, you can be Angry Birds, but there's a million others that aren't very successful. So we don't really invest in apps themselves, we invest more in platforms.
Sure, but so I mean, I would guess that if you went to the guys at Pebble, they'd say, hey, we have an API, we have a rapidly growing app ecosystem, we're developing a platform that's going to be used. I'm not saying would you invest in Pebble, but are those the kinds of things that, in terms of thinking about the space, are potentially interesting?
Yeah, they are. I mean, to be honest with you, we don't do a lot of health apps or health-related investments. We're more in digital media and mobile and commerce. So if you look at our portfolio, there's not a lot of true health-related stuff there. But the premise remains the same for us. It's really platform-based. Businesses, and at our stage, again, we're investing a lot in the entrepreneur. So I met Brian when he was 17. He's all of 22 now. But we invest a lot in who that founding group is. Businesses pivot constantly. You have to have the core team that has the ability to execute, has the ability to, you know, be able to pivot their business and also be able to attract talent. So really that's what we look for. And you know, traditionally was, you know, find a market, address that market, build a product that associated to that, and then, you know, build a team around it. We really do just the opposite. We find the team, the product, and then evolve it into a market opportunity.
Okay, just for the crowd, 2 more things. One, there aren't that many tweets yet, so I think your odds of impressing Dave in the back and winning the Golden State Warriors tickets are still high, so tweet. 2, the Red Sox are still at 5-0, so that's great. And 3, we're going to have Q&A after the next question, so if you have questions for the panel, get them ready. Okay, so this will probably be the last, or at least one of the last questions for me. One of the things we've sort of, that I understand reasonably well is, okay, how like the kind of quantitative, quantified self-apps work. But I play a lot of, like, I like to play tennis, I like to play basketball, I like to play soccer. Are there going to be solutions down the road for those kinds of things? I mean, Travis, I'm sure you could talk to me a little bit about what you've done to make a skill-based sport like golf. But yeah, where do you see this technology affecting those kinds of athletes?
You know, I did have one conversation with a developer a while back, and I don't think they got this idea off the ground, but they were working on an app that you would, you know, for your smartphone, takes advantage of the gyroscope accelerometer in there, and lets you take it and go skiing, and it sort of, it can tell the kind of skier you are based on the turns you make, right? Whether you make wide arc turns, short, and at the end, it sort of is recommending the type of skis you should buy. And that was something that we were, you know, they came to us because they were like, hey, let's see, we should co-brand this, would be great. I don't really think they got it off the ground, but that is the kind of thing that I think could come out. And that is, you know, in that case, you're looking at something that, in that specific idea, was help you get the right product. But you can imagine a lot of other applications for that.
Yeah, I've seen a couple of ideas or, you know, concepts around, you know, everyone talks about quantified self as it relates to their one activity, jogging or skiing, it's one-on-one. But really there's a huge gap on, you know, someone who's playing basketball against someone else, someone who's playing tennis. And so I've seen things where there's a small chip against the other person, and in relation to that person, you can tell how many times you jumped versus them, how many times you shot a shot, how fast you're moving in relation to them. Again, it's data that you have to still package that makes it valuable. I mean, as a recreational basketball player, is that something that I can use to tell me, okay, if I shoot from the right side over a guy who's 5'10", am I more likely to make that shot versus on the left side or vice versa? Now, as someone who plays rec basketball a lot, and I know a lot of guys who always shoot from the same spot and miss 90% of the time, I would love to give them that data to say, stop shooting from there, you're terrible, I don't know why you keep shooting. But, you know, you can envision that would be the next step. It's something very simple, something very lightweight that interacts with other people, creating these kind of gamification scenarios.
So there's a lot of information that people are extracting from activities. I want to get some credit for that. So I'm serious. I mean, look, I get charged for my insurance based on my age. It doesn't make any freaking sense to me, right? You know, so I'm monitoring all this stuff, right? And you know that I'm really active, and the only risk you have is that I'm going to crash on my bike, but I never go to the doctor otherwise. I'm 57 and probably as fit as a 25-year-old. I don't get credit for that, right? So there should be some way to take that quantified information and use it to my benefit, right? Because we're too politically correct to say that you're obese and I'm going to dock you for it. But if I get credit for being healthy, I should do that. So that's a bigger issue. It's not just an app solution, but it's saying we have all this information. Why don't you use it to our benefit and get credit for it?
That's a beautiful idea.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And I mean, I'm sure you've heard of saying companies. I've heard a bunch of companies talking about monetizing long-term through health insurance providers with that sort of data. So, all really interesting answers to my questions, but I'm very interested in what the audience has to say. Who has questions in the audience right now? Let's open it up to Q&A. Yep.
want to comment.
Can you stand up and probably yell?
Michael, probably. It's not really a question, but I'd like to hear your opinion. I'm doing that myself. I use Garmin. User interface is great, but the main reason I use Garmin is there is no app in the world which will not kill the battery. I get the races during the regular training sessions. What do you think?
I mean, yeah, that's a problem people talk about all the time. That is the issue. I mean, I use Strava on an iPhone and it kills it. You know, I mean, that's where, you know, that's why you're using your Garmin. And all I can tell you is I agree with you, and that's going to be sorted out. And when it does, there's a product there.
How long is your training session that you're killing your whole battery?
Most of them won't go in 3 hours.
So my app, a general round of golf lasts about 4 or 5 hours, and we're pinging GPS the entire time. You have your screen on a lot of the time, and battery is an issue. I mean, there's no way around it. Battery is always going to be an issue until batteries get better. Some phones are better than others. Some apps are better than others. You might just look around and see what you can find.
Galaxy S4.
I have a second question also, record glasses, safety.
Well, okay, yeah, that's the first thing people come up to. Well, these people on bikes, these crazy jerks and spandex going so fast, and now you're going to put a computer screen in front? You're looking at your Garmin. I mean, when you're riding, you're going, oh wait, I should look down here. That's a lot less safe, I would argue, than staying up here. And that's at least what Recon will tell you. And I think the thing is, people want those metrics. And how many people see people pulling out phone? I see road cyclists with their iPhone out, looking at where they are on Strava while doing 28 miles an hour. So I think, yes, it's a safety issue, but that's like, say, to me, that the comparison is using your hands-free cell phone. You probably shouldn't talk on the car regardless, but at least don't hold it.
Some disagree with this. I use it in my Garmin when I choose to. In my glasses, those glasses, it gives me information, it changes, it flashes. It's not by my choice, as far as the data change. Same goes with those sleep and skiing goggles.
Right. Well, and those skiing goggles haven't been a major success, but I would argue that's more, and we took a pretty skeptical take on those in outside, because why do skiers need that kind of data? I mean, well, they are, but compared to an endurance cyclist who's a little more addicted to the, to that kind of metrics.
All right. Really good conversation. Just to get to some other people's questions, who else has questions for the panel? Anyone? Right here.
So you guys talked a lot about the quantified self and gathering the data and display for the user who's exercising, or whether it's health or exercising. What, if any, role is there for human on the other side, whether it be a coach or doctor, to evaluate and feedback and have that sort of at-distance conversation, whether it's sports or health?
Well, I mentioned that this OptiEye product, that it's being fed to a central database and then just distributed to the different coaches. So it's really used as an injury prevention mechanism. So, I think that's one good example of how you were able to distill down information, and it can go to your doctor, it can go to your coach, it can go to your trainer. I think all of those things.
For the medical community, for the health, to your question, there's going to be a major shift in terms of at-home distance care, distance checkups. So there's a large segment of people that are homebound. There's a large segment of people who are physically fit, who don't need to clog up the healthcare system by going to an office, who have regular medical needs, but they aren't medical, or major rather. And so what I've seen are several concepts, and again, a couple of companies working in the area where the biggest display you have in your home is your 50, 60, 70-inch TV. Samsung just released an 85-inch, by the way. But in all seriousness, you're to the point about your apps are recording all your blood, medical, your body, your blood pressure throughout the day or during the time. And then you have a doctor who on the other side of your TV, because the TV has a camera, you do a physical exam, you do a monitoring, and they can see with the high clarity camera, okay, you're looking good, you're looking fine. That's going to remove so many costs out of the system in terms of waiting time, in terms of doctor time, in terms of doctor care. And these things are occurring rapidly right now.
Great. The guy standing up in the back.
Riga. So I have a question. How you guys see gamification as a part of in order to better traction of applications and solutions? Because we have this huge space where you have this science, and then we have a user experience, and then we have a problem, and then we have a need. So, but what's a question about gamification? How we can get the reach and get a really good traction? So, what's your answer for that?
Well, again, a company like Kiip sort of takes advantage of that. It's all sort of gamifying the achievement process. So I level up, I get something, I level up again. The interesting thing about this, I'll give you a little pitch on Kiip. Basically, it's these happiness moments. It's serendipitous as opposed to just every time you level up, you get something. So you're not really sure whether you're going to get a reward, even though you level up. So that actually adds to the interest of it. So that's one part. I think the other part is that there is with all this technology and the social component that part of the gamification is just competition, right? If I know that I'm close to the king of the hill, I'm going to work my ass off to make sure that I do that. And that information makes it less gamified and more just competition. But all of the devices we have today allows us to do that. So it's almost like built-in gamification.
Back right.
Well, I'm sort of like a technology nerd.
Can you yell?
Yeah, sure. So I really don't use a lot of these applications, if any of them. I wouldn't call myself a recreational athlete per se, but I was just wondering if you guys are noticing sort of the division within the marketplace for those of us who really are, I'm a personal trainer and I don't really use any of the applications or the data, and I don't have Strava, and I only check the surf report. That's the only app that I use. I just feel like sometimes that this marketplace is so over inundated with all of these different technology applications that for somebody like me who's a bit of a skeptic, and if I'm out hiking, I'm looking at a topo map as opposed to using the Garmin. I'm just wondering if for the people that are, I'm not a weekend warrior by any means, but I'm not using any of this stuff, sometimes I feel like all of these applications are encouraging us to know ourselves more as athletes, but then also simultaneously less as athletes because we're spending so much time, on the app and less time on the bike.
That's something we get from our audience and outside too, because there's a lot of old bearded hikers who still read the magazine. Well, beards are cool again, I should put it that way. Yeah, maybe, but what I would argue is I think by personality I might be like you, even though I'm supposed to be studying all of this technology. I will say what has happened to me, and I think what happens to a lot of people, is there's a lot of skeptics, and then you try it, and either you love it or you hate it, but one of the things that happens once you start monitoring yourself is after a while you don't have to monitor anymore. And that's what happens, at least with endurance athletes. I don't know if that's your experience, but once you get used to knowing what your heart, simple biofeedback stuff. Once you know what your heart rate is, and once you know your speed and your cadence and all that stuff, and you look at those numbers for a while, I can turn all that off and I'll tell you what my numbers are. I'll be like, right now I'm 142, roughly, and I'll be, and that's because once you learn your body, and I think that's the sort of way to transcend some of what you're talking about, is use these things to get those numbers, but in terms of really, are they giving us better health? Are they improving our experiences? Not for everyone, but they sure can, is my answer.
So I would, on top of that, majority of people argue. We live in Silicon Valley where, we think everybody uses technology like that, which isn't really true. So I don't think you're necessarily that much of a Luddite compared to the rest of the world. But I agree with exactly what you're saying.
So the golf world, it's estimated that multiple more people play golf electronically and don't play golf itself.
It's true.
How do we move people from, talking about people who are inactive, how do you move them from the computer or from the console or from the arcade to the actual sport? So maybe it's basketball. I think football might be hard, for somebody 40 play football, but how do you move them from a basketball game, from EA Sports to the court? Is anyone doing that right now, if you guys are seeing?
The golf market is talking about that a lot right now. I mean, there's estimated something like 60 million people that play Tiger Woods golf on their Xbox. There's only 25 million people that actually golf every year.
What's interesting too, you think about Wii is sort of a in between, right? It's an active video game. It's not actually going on the golf course, but people actually, a lot of people get their exercise with Wii, right? So I think there's hybrids of this. You know, golf is a dedicated sport. You need a lot of time, and you need some money and place to play.
It's hard to approach. It's hard to get in for the first time. Like for somebody who's never golfed before, how do you even go about getting started? It's intimidating, right? And I think that a lot of sports are probably like that. Like if you want to play basketball, that's fantastic, but going down to the local park where those guys are balling all day long is intimidating. I don't know, if you can figure out how to solve that last mile problem there, you probably have a nice company.
But are we even, I agree, but are we even certain that those 60 million people want to actually physically play? I mean, we live in a world where you just want to experience things, experience from a different perspective, and you don't want to deal with the friction of actually playing golf.
If you can get 10% of those people to convert into the sport, that's a significant impact on my sport.
Okay, last couple questions. Back left.
Okay, so we've been talking a lot about like wearable tech, and that's cool, but my question's kind of about the bad people essentially. What's kind of exciting to you guys about two-screen technology? What's going on with dual screens? Maybe the next stuff that's more about the fan who's watching sports on the couch than the guy who's riding the bike. So I'm just curious.
Now you're more in my wheelhouse. It's a big issue because I deal a lot with the networks. I deal a lot with the Warner Brothers, and they're losing audience through second screen, and now you see like the NFL has a relationship with Verizon, so you can watch games on your mobile device. So the second screen becomes critical for these companies, and it all comes down. I think you mentioned ad rates. It comes down to ad rates because you're basically judged on Nielsen ratings. Nielsen does not take into consideration social import of second screen.
What role do you see culture playing in a lot of these things? For example, you're with Samsung, and during the NBA Finals, there was a commercial with Jay-Z who has nothing to do with technology, but he fuels a culture, which in return is great marketing for consumers. And what I see is a lot of techies create a lot of applications where you're doing a lot of quantitative analysis and crunching numbers and providing feedback. But at the end of the day, if you want people to be more active, you have to kind of take, in my opinion, like the Nike approach, which is you sell a culture, you sell a lifestyle, and then you get people engaged in your product. So what do you guys think on that?
Well, I can give you a personal experience. When I was at Reebok, we actually were very involved in the hip hop community, right? I spent a lot of time. You can tell it just by looking at me in the urban areas, right? But we actually went to that community and we said, help us evolve our product, right? And so we did. So I used to literally go in South Central and meet with people in that urban community and they would help us develop our product. And as a result, we went in and we did refurbished basketball courts and that kind of thing. But we created a huge loyalty within that community because we were very authentic about how we went into that community. And it wasn't about tech, it wasn't about anything else. It was about going into the neighborhood, knowing that this product, shoes, are very important. How can you help us develop it? How can we give back? And that helped us really accelerate our business dramatically. So that's one example of nothing about tech, it's all about culture and community.
I think just one example that I remember recently was Under Armour and their Willpower band. You all saw that, right? And I thought that was a great way of positioning and trying to position it in a very clear, easy manner for an athlete to understand, a recreational athlete to understand. So you had a bunch of people who weren't famous, but they were working out hard and just in incredible shape. And then you overlay that with the word willpower, which has a lot of power in your mind, which means no matter what you're doing, do you have your internal drive to succeed, to challenge yourself. So it's a great way to kind of position the product and to position the product.
Great. First of all, I think that's all the time we have left, though we'll hang out and have beer, pizza for the next half hour. But big thanks to the panel. Big round of applause. quick one or two things before we get to the fun. Hey Dave, do we know who won the StubHub tweet off?
Oh yes, we do.
You want to go, Mike?
Yeah. All right. So, just want to thank again StubHub for sponsoring the event. They were nice enough to buy the pizza and the beer that we all enjoyed tonight. And also, just by a show of hands, who here is an employee of StubHub? You had a good turnout tonight. So, if you have questions about the site, you can find any one of those folks. I also work there, and again, been a great sponsor of this event here. So, without further ado, we had a lot of great tweets. There were some excellent ones, there were some silly ones, but there was one tweeter that stood above all the rest. Let's get a drum roll, please, for tonight's winner of 2 tickets to next Wednesday's. The drum roll can keep going. For next Wednesday's season opener goes to Friedley. Yeah, there she is.
Okay.
What's the tweet?
There were many. The last one, the best one, was hashtag serendipity, hashtag competition, hashtag gamification, hashtag sports and tech.
Solid. Alright, lastly, we're going to have another meetup next month. If you'd like to think about the second screen, we'll talk a lot about that stuff. It's about the future of television and video. We have people from the 49ers, Twitter, Comcast, Sportsnet, Comcast Ventures. So that should be fun. If you want to sponsor it, find me. If you want to host it, find me. Otherwise, thanks a lot.